This section will focus on the history, growth, and impact of Army aviation in the Wiregrass and how the World War II training camp, which was Camp Rucker, became a significant presence and influence on the economy, culture, and educational programs of Dale County. Just some admin points. The restroom is directly underneath the stairwell. You get to it by going to either of the halls and turning inbound and heading back towards the front. There are labels everywhere, so you'll find it.
Turn the light from the outside.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't know that. Turn the light on from the outside. Okay, refreshments will be in the dining room. So we have a variety of tea, lemonade, those fuzzy things, and water. And also a lot of goodies that have been provided. So thank you very much if you helped to supply all the goodies. Upstairs on the second floor on this side, we have two museums, and one of them is at the back or the front end of the house, I guess. Is the Warrant Officer Museum. Would really love for you to go and look at those, but please no food or drinks when you go upstairs because we don't want to mess this up there. Upcoming events next Sunday, right here once again, there will be the creative expressions and recollections with music provided by the Arluda Band at 2 p.m. So our Sunday sessions, I guess, are always going to be at 2. It's more convenient that way. And then the last one that we'll be having, the Dale County Council of the Arts and Humanities, will be on the 17th at the Anrud Art Center, which is on the corner of Broad and South Union, right there on the square. And the title will be The Soul of the Wiregrass and the Blues of Dale County. So, okay, get ready for the program now. Admin stuff out of the way. Today our program will begin with, Mr. Robert Mitchell, the director. Got a frog in my throat. Director of the U.S. Army Aviation Museum at Fort Novosel. So please welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to invite everybody to the Army Aviation Museum. We just finished a new structure there, 135,000 square feet. It's generally not open to the public because we don't have the staff for it, but we have open houses once a quarter, and it'll be open on Saturday of Martin Luther King weekend. So I invite everybody to come out and see. Well, I've been asked to speak today on the history of Camp Rucker, Fort Rucker, Fort Novosel, and Army aviation and influence on the post. So, without getting into detailed history before the war, Bob's going to cover a lot of that historical material about Dale County. Suffice it to say that there was an argument to bring a military installation down to this area. There was a little bit of back and forth, and reluctance. And then all of a sudden, December 7th occurs, and all reluctancy faded away quickly. And because the Army knew they were going to have to establish hundreds of camps around the country, and we already had a reserve down here, so the decision was made to bring the military down here. And what was called the Ozark Triangular Divisional Area. Shortly after that move, they said, well, let's name it after a Confederate general to kind of patch things over here, so they decided to name it after Edmund Rucker, who was an Alabama native. And, not a very stunning career as a general, but he certainly had a lot of impact after the war on Alabama, and he certainly deserved to have something named after him. So, the first division to be moved down here would be the 81st Division, and of course, They moved down here while the J.A. Jones Company from North Carolina was contracted to build the post. Their headquarters was actually set up over there where Martindale Plaza is today, and that's where he had his construction company set up. And they were able to build roughly 1,500 structures in a little over 100 days, which that's just a stunning achievement. Everything from barracks to mess halls, to order rooms, headquarters buildings, motor pools, all that. Paved streets, very stunning accomplishment in such a short period of time. But you know, back then it was do or die, we had to get it done. So the 81st Division moves down here, and you may remember that division, it's the Black Cat, and they're still here today. They're still, they're the 81st Regional Support Command, and they're located out there at Knoxfield. So essentially what would happen was you would have soldiers graduate from their AITs, whether they were a cook, an infantryman, artilleryman, a nurse. They would get orders for Camp Rucker, and then when everybody got here, they would assemble a division, give it a number, have a ceremony, stand it up. They would go through the training here, their individual training, then their collective training. They would go to the ranges and qualify their weapons, whether it be a 155 artillery piece or a tank or an M1 rifle. Then they'd have their evaluation. We call it an RTEP, but it's basically an evaluation, a test to see if they can pass all the tasks required for a division to be considered combat ready. And when they pass the test, then they would be shipped off to either the Pacific or the European theater of war. We trained 4 divisions down here and a number of other smaller units. And we also had a large contingent of Women's Army Corps WACs trained down here. Then, of course, as we land in North Africa and we start encountering the enemy, the first encounter didn't go real well. We were up against a seasoned professional army, the Africa Corps, and we had to make a little adjustments with some generals and some other changes of command, and then we finally found our stride. And as we started to win on the battlefield, we also started taking a lot of Italian and German POWs. Where did they bring them? They brought them back to the States. And one of the prisoner of war camps was right out there at Camp Rucker. Of course, the prisoners never had it so good. I mean, they were eating better than they were when they were actually in the German army. Nobody shooting at them. And they loved to work. So the army decided they would farm these prisoners of war out to the local farmers to use as labor on the farm. And these guys just absolutely loved it. I mean, yes?
They went to my grandmother's place. Some of them did work for them.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, well, there you have it.
Up in North Park County. I wanted to add that in, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. I'm glad you did. Thank you. And according to the farmers, these guys just attacked the work. They were very efficient. They loved what they were doing. They loved to be out doing something. And so much so that during Thanksgiving and Christmas, the farm families would invite them out for Thanksgiving dinner and Christmas time.
Yes. Yes.
And after the war, a lot of them, they didn't want to go back. And then later on in the war, when we started finding the camps, then the treatment kind of tightened up a little bit on it. But it was a pretty good relationship for everybody involved. And then, of course, we start winning. We beat the Germans, and then we beat the Japanese. And at the same time, a new congressman, George Andrews, is elected. And now we're looking at the end of the war. We move into 1946. And all the hoopla is over and the parades are over with and all that. Now it's time to demobilize. So you can imagine there was quite a bit of consternation around here. Hey, what's going to happen to Camp Rucker? So for the next few years, there was lobbying back and forth to keep it open. And Congressman Andrews even proposed a training center down for the Quartermaster Corps in June of 1950. And they were doing anything they could to keep the post alive. And they kept it up too, they didn't let it get run down, which makes a big difference. And then shortly after his proposal there, I think a week later, the North Korean People's Army attacked the South and the Korean War starts. So Camp Rucker is saved once again, and now it's going to be utilized as a mobilization center for National Guard units. So they come down here, they would train up, and the decision be made either to deploy them or they'd be used in other capacities throughout the country. And then, obviously, at the end of the Korean War, it's going to be another demobilization. So George Andrews, he was Johnny on the spot. He's up there lobbying for Camp Rucker, and at the time, the Army is realizing that where they do their aviation training at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, the area around Fort Sill is now too small. There's too much conflicts, too much traffic, and it's clear that either the artillery school's got to move or aviation's got to move. So they make the determination to move Army aviation out of there. So Congressman Andrews, along with the Hill and Sparkman, the two senators from Alabama, they're lobbying hard with the Army, and they gave them a list of reasons why they should consider Camp Rucker. And those reasons were very valid ones. There was low density of air traffic down here. There was infrastructure already in place, runways, because they had built Ozark Airport, Cairns, on 1,200 acres there during the war. So there was already infrastructure for aviation down here. There was plenty of housing. Now that the infantry divisions had left, when they left, they actually walked from Camp Rucker to Fort Benning. We talk about road march, that's a road march. Oh my goodness. So when they left, we had plenty of housing available now, so the Army said, okay, sounds like a good idea. We're going to make it a full-time base. It's going to be Fort Rucker, and we're going to move Army aviation down here. And they did, and of course, training began in earnest, and then one of the first generals down here under the post was Wiregrass Cairns, and he was killed, so they renamed the Ozark Airfield Cairns Airfield. So that's basically how that came to be. Story says he landed at a field site. It was getting dark. He took off, and they had just strung a piece of common wire up, and his skids hooked it and rolled the aircraft over, and he was killed in the crash. So now Fort Rucker is home of Army aviation, and all sorts of training is taking place here with the H-13 aircraft, the little MASH helicopters, the H-19s, which were a prominent helicopter from the Korean War, the new CH-34s were sent down here to train, and a lot going on down here during that period of time. And then obviously as we move into the 60s, things start to change. The Army Aviation now has a new helicopter called the Huey, the UH-1, which revolutionized Army aviation and aviation, commercial aviation immensely. It was a turbine-powered, very efficient aircraft, and it was a good thing that we developed that because we were going to be relying on the aircraft heavily in the future, as Mr. Mayor Bunning can tell you about. So I'm going to go ahead and then we move into the 60s and Vietnam and training down here. We bring the training, the primary training we were doing at Fort Walters, Texas, moves down here to Fort Rucker. So now it's lock, stock, and barrel down here at Fort Rucker. We do have some training going on at remote sites, but primarily the focus of aviation training is down here. And then, of course, we bring the Air Force down here and offer them their rotary wing training. We have all the infrastructure, the aircraft. Hey guys, come on down. So the Air Force opts for that. We tried to get the Navy to move up here, but boy, that's a powerful constituency down there. At the time, Congressman Bob Sykes wasn't about to let that go. No. So they're down there, we're up here, not far away.
And the last strike commission, it was approved for that to happen, but it didn't happen. It was there because of that power they had.
The same thing's going on with Fort Eustis in Virginia.
Yeah.
You know, we should be bringing aviation maintenance training down here, but oh no, they're not letting go of that.
The Senator Warren stuff there.
Yep, absolutely. So, what are your questions? Comments? Additions? If there are none, I'm going to turn it over to Bob, and he's going to talk about the history of Dale County going way back.
Well, stand up. If y'all haven't read this one, The Origins of Fort Rucker, you need to. It really is unbelievable. The press quit. Listen, no fact checking. There's probably going to be 3 or 4 Pinocchios here that you can fact check. So it's not allowed. Okay, no fact checking, any of that kind of stuff. But many of you heard me talk over 3 or 4 months ago over at the museum, our museum here in town. And I started off at that time asking, some of you may be old enough to know this, who Thomas Sowell. Anybody remember him from when the Dothan Eagle was a newspaper? But Thomas had an article in there every week, and he was my favorite columnist. He wrote for the LA Times, and sometimes when he would start his column off, he would start it off saying that he couldn't think of anything to write about it, so it would be just random thoughts. So I've got a lot of random thoughts here, and so that's why there could be a lot of Pinocchios. But anything else, you can just blame it on me being 87 years old, whatever you want to do on that. But and Frank, Patty said I could talk a lot about what I did 3 months ago, so I am. But Thomas Sowell was my favorite columnist, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Random thoughts on the people, the organizations, the relationships with Fort Rucker, and then move on. But so sometimes Bob was so smooth right then, so I'm not very smooth. So sometimes, you might expect a lot, so don't get your expectations up too high. Okay? Don't afford to notice that. So mainly people. But, I think what's interesting about what at least to me, what I'm saying is that, how did Fort Rucker happen? Really, how did it happen? A lot of people just believe we're going to get a war coming on and Fort Rucker showed up. But, you go back, we had a congressman by the name of Henry Stigall. And he came in office in 1915. And he, as a result of the gentleman that was the head of the banking committee at that time, got, I guess, appointed by one of the senators to be the president at that time to go and be a federal judge. So Congressman Stigall moved up into that very powerful banking thing. So then we go, go up to the Depression years. And I got to say there are 2 events and 3 men that had the greatest impact on how and why we have Fort Rucker today. And the Depression, World War II, Congressman Stigall, Doug Thomason, and Jesse Adams. If we had not had those men, I don't know if Fort Rucker would have ever been here. And I just talk a little bit about that. So Congressman Stigall, in charge of banking, he got the Banking Act through. He's the father, he and Senator Glass fathered the FDIC. And he also got passed the Resettlement Act, which turned out to be, Doug Thompson did not know about it, but his boss in Auburn called him and told him that he should investigate and look into that. So he put a proposal together, and the gentleman that was in charge of resettlement talked him into coming down here. So there was land on the east side of Ozark and on the west side. And he, being from here, he wanted to show him the land on the west side. So he took him out on the first visit that he was here, took him out, rode him all day long. And when he got back, he got to understand how poor the farmers were and how they had nothing. Matter of fact, this is one of my favorite quotes is, "How in the world can a poor man eat 5-cent cotton and 10-cent meat?" And that's the kind of things. And he said, the problem is there are no money. And truly there was no money because both banks in Ozark had closed. If anybody that had money in those banks, they couldn't get to it. So with that background, Doug Thompson thought it would be a good idea if we could sell some of this land and it'd be bought up by the government. So he went on the west side, drove him all around all day long, and he gets back and the gentleman says, "No way, I'm leaving tomorrow." And he said, "Why?" "Well, we rode all day and I saw a house that had paint on it." That's how bad things were. So the next morning when he met him to take him to the train, he asked him if he would stay another day. And so in the meantime, he had the guy that worked for him over here at the hog auction to go out there and find another route. So he took him on a route and he gave him instructions. Said, "Do not pick a farm or find a farm. Go by any place that has any paint on it." So he drove him all over the countryside and came back and he says, "I think you qualify. So go ahead and put something together and submit it." And so as a result of that, there was I think somewhere around 300 farmers. And that's where Jesse Adams comes in the picture. They got them all together. He writes articles in the newspaper, and so they had this big meeting on trying to get the farmers to sell. And the way Jesse really got them to sell, you're talking about the 1933, 1935 time period, was that that he had this meeting. And fairly everybody there was against him, but when he told him that there was a good chance, and there was nothing talked, but Jesse had this vision that there was going to be another war, and so he talked to all the farmers and said that there's a very good chance that there's going to be another war, and we could be in line to be another Fort Benning or Maxwell or something like that. So they got all the farmers, and it turned out to be some 33,000 acres. And so, we speak of Fort Rucker being a place of 64,000 acres, and the question might be, where did it come from? That's where World War II gets in the picture. The very day after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the president announced that they're going to go ahead and use eminent domain and take the rest of the land here. And by the way, the farmers got $7.46 an acre for their property on that. So Doug, Jesse, and what the congressman did is how we really got Fort Rucker, or at that time the land. One of the things that was written about the first 30,000 acres that was bought, it could not, it had to be, the strangest word to me, unmilitary land, whatever that is. So and that was one of the, and I think part of the reason was because they were turning it into called a bird refuge, which, what was the gentleman's name you were telling me about? At the hog farm or the?
Oh, that was Clayton Bell.
Yeah, Clayton Bell. There's some people, I guess he was at the co-op, and people would always, what's going on? What's going on? And he finally got tired of listening to it and said it was going to be a bear farm. So if y'all heard of that, that's how that got started. So Bob mentioned the advent, then World War II comes along, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about people, some of the things that it helped with Dale County and Ozark and stuff. But I was thinking that, and everyone in here, I think in the room knows Ed Hillbolt, and he married one of the Carroll sisters. But Ed, when his division came here, and he was one of the, their division was one of the last ones, they were training, they trained here, and then the division moved to Hawaii, and they were going to be the division that if we didn't drop the bomb, they were going to go into Japan. But the thing about Ed's division, all the rest of them were dropped off at the depot that Jim and I and a lot of other people did everything we could to save that. But it's a shame that we lost that with all that history. But his division was dropped off at Troy, and he walked to Fort Ricker from there. But and I was just thinking, so World War II's here, and this Ozark and the surrounding areas are becoming very prosperous. A lot of you know the Riley bus company. Fort Rucker had no movies, and Mr. Riley had, I don't know how many buses he had, but it was 10 cents a ride from Fort Rucker. He'd pick them up, come here. We had 2 theaters at the time, and he would pick the kids up afterwards. Round trip, 10 cents. In fact, check that. I don't know, it may not be right. But I thought that. But anyway, going up on North Union, the big white house, that was the Raleigh house. Some people that grew up here in Ozark, and then she left and worked in New Jersey for years, and she owns it now. They keep it looking nice. But so there was 2. It's my understanding there was the 2 Bracken theaters, and so anyway, getting that Ozark prospered, Wiregrass prospered. And then World War II comes to an end. Yes, they keep the post up, but now we're down a ghost town again. Nothing is going on. And now the Korean War starts up. But during that time, people were opening up their houses, and Joe Gobbin had some great stories to tell about what his dad and mom did, or his dad went in World War II. But it was just, local people were just great. And again, they prospered. So after World War II ends, Bob mentioned that, it's post is in all what was going on, the political part of it, and trying to get some more activity here. And so we have, so Aviation, Fort Sill is a fixed wing aviation. Frank, you went through fixed wing first?
Rotary.
Huh?
Rotary first.
Rotary, but anyway, most of us, when I graduated, if you were branched artillery, you went fixed wing. So I came here and trained at a low field in an L-19 for years and years, and became an L-19 pilot. And again, the impact that post had on me and hundreds of other guys that came here, because we found the prettiest girls. And somehow we latched on to them, and I want to talk a little bit about some of those ladies too.
They actually said that the birth of Army Aviation wasn't sealed in June of '42 when the field artillery just, they changed their way of training and they brought the helicopters in. I was reading that in the historical part of it.
Yeah, but we were,
They called it the
so most of the helicopters still, so when well, I don't want to get, well, I'm getting ahead of myself, but when Vietnam started, we were no longer a fixed wing army anymore. We're a helicopter army now. And so I came back here from my first tour, and I was an IP in the Department of Tactics. And when we would have a graduation, this is between the 400 a month that was graduating out of Hunter and the 400 a month here, we were graduating 800 students. I mean, it was unreal what we were doing, but I go back to what I said. I was a fixed wing pilot, and so 1965 and 66 here, Vietnam started, and so they were pulling everybody on active duty as they possibly can to go, the helicopter go. So I was fixed wing, so I was pulled off ground duty and came here, and I was in the first helicopter qualification course that was started here, and I had a transition in an H-13, and Linda became pregnant, so I got a deferment until Allison was born. But I went through, and so many pilots here probably remember the double nickel dime course, and that was, the Army had found that we were losing lots and lots of pilots because they could not transition. They'd fly into a cloud, and we were losing a lot of people to accidents rather than combat. So they started this double nickel dime program, which gave all the pilots a tactical ticket when they graduated from flight school. Frank, what have I left off? I know what I want to get into. But I was going to say, pilots today live pretty nice out of Fort Rucker. When I went through, we had 2 windows and a fan.
But back in the day, because I grew up here, you could tell the difference between the commission officers that were coming, say, out of Mineral Wells here, because of the pay they were getting. So that's why you saw all the Corvettes and everything running around town. So that's how the locals pick up the officers.
You went, if
Not the warrant officer.
Warrant officer.
Sure.
Warrant officer still broke.
That's right.
now, back then, if you wanted to buy a car, wait till a class was graduating. It was a good time to buy a car. I bought Allison a convertible Saab for almost nothing. She was going to Vietnam. She wanted to sell it, and that's all she wanted. But she just wanted somebody to take up the payments. They weren't very much. But I want to talk to some of the people. I know that made an impact, to not only the Dale County, but just Lou's here, He came, retired, came back this way, and, became the Adjutant General. And, but able to retire with 2 stars. But what an impact he made on the National Guard. Ron Inyard here, he's married a little girl on that. Earl Hires, of course, passed away. Frank Estes, he worked forever out at Fort Rucker after retired. He was one of 4 chief of staffs that I can think of. John Miller, myself, Frank.
Jake Kuderman.
Well, but he didn't retire in Ozark. But
No, he went to Enterprise.
And
He was a deserter. He
and Whitney Gardner. There was 4 chiefs of staff. At one time, we had more generals living here than any other community. So when, say, Dave Allen passed away, see, General Kenny's still here, Lou's still here, he's like me, he's got one to put in the grave. But I wanted to talk about again about, I mentioned Ed Hillbolt. Yeah, I know I'm talking too much, too long. That's my wife told me that too. But she told me that, and then my daughter the other day when I was talking to her about this, she said, Dad, you can't do that. But I want to finish up with this, and I still have some other. But Ed Hillbolt married one of the Carols, and then wanted to impact the Buddy Matthews, that connection to his daughter and Joe Johnston's son and the Army Aviation song. And that's a connection here in Dale County, part of our history that I'm very proud of. And John Miller was the chief of staff at that time and worked with Joe Johnson in working on that song. And I think I shared this with the last time. One of the most embarrassing moments of my life was at a Christmas party in 1987 at our command Christmas party, and the song had just been published. And my boss was Rod Wolf, and I was the MC, and he got up there and gave me an order to sing that song. Even if you know it, it's a hard song to sing. I can tell you that.
Can you sing it for us, Bob?
I am not going to do that. But I know that there's a lot more can be said about the people, but I wanted to make that connection. Whitney Gardner, we got a Sergeant Major Chuck Fry, was a command sergeant major. His health is very, very, very bad. Will Haddon was a command sergeant major of one of the battalions out there, or one of the brigades. So I could talk about a lot more people, but I've bored you enough. And it's if you haven't read how it all got started, just read it. But that's it. I quit.
Can I just add something to this? Talk about a small world. Connie and I, there was no doubt in our mind that where we were going to live, it was going to be in Ozark. And anyway, I didn't know Bob, but we were over on our last tours in the 2 Corps, I Corps area. Bob was the commander of a helicopter company, and they had they had to haul divisions of South Vietnamese soldiers in the tri-border area, which is a really, really bad place. The operation was called Ron San 719. And Bob, I'm just telling you what you guys told me, that they got shot while they were at Quezon, at the post, because that was where the French were defeated in detail. They got shot going to work, they got shot at work, and they got shot at coming home. And a lot of soldiers and aviators were killed during that time. But they were getting ready to go back. The operation's over. And Bob and his people were packing up and getting ready to go like everyone else. And they got the word, stop what you're doing. The Arvin are getting overrun, and you got to go back in to rescue them. I've heard the conversations that were taped and everything. But Bob had a particularly interesting thing. Bob's a warrior, make no doubt about it. And so anyway, he says, we got to go. And he had people that said, we're not going to go back in. Bob grabbed his gear with his pilot, and he walked out to the flight line. And every one of his crews came out and followed him. And it was a bloodbath. It was horrible. I mean, Bob, you could tell that story over and over again. I know. Anyone can get PS, the problem with your mental issues and everything. That was the operation. And then Then I had a conversation with Bob and Earl Pirates. We never talked together about much. And they asked me where I was assigned and what year, and I said I was in the 25th Infantry Division getting ready to take over a rifle company. And Earl said, what unit were you in? I said, Alpha Company 4th and 23rd, I was getting ready to take over. But they had an operation, and he was in the 117th Hornets along the world.
116?
Yeah, the 116th Hornets. And anyway, it was a routine mission. He practically lived in a sniper fire. And then when they're getting ready to go in and take it back out again, all hell broke loose. And they had the first lift go in, and they were just climbing out, and the other group that was just right behind them getting ready to take them up. All hell broke loose, and they got a lot of aircraft shot down. And
Lou spent the night on the ground there.
yeah, it was an interesting time. But the bottom line, who would have thought? But anyway, that guy is a warrior. I love him to death.
She was one of the first women to attend the initial entry rotary wing aviator course as a WOC, which is a warrant officer candidate, in the mid-70s. Besides her many accomplishments in the UH-1 and other aircraft, she also has the unique qualification of being one of the few women to be qualified in the AH-64 Apache. So please welcome Trish Myler. We're just going to wing it. I don't know how well y'all can see this small screen or if it's in the shadows or whatever. But first of all, can I get a show of hands of anyone that currently works at Rutger or has in the past, either military or civilian? Oh my goodness, see? All right. I grew up in North Coffee County, Alabama, of course. Went to school at Zion Chapel. Some of you may know where that is.
Huge high school.
It was back in the day. I think we had 20-something in my graduating class. So my dad had been in the military 10 to 11 years, that's counting his reserve time. He was a World War II infantryman, 254th out of the 63rd ID in World War II. So he didn't talk too much about his time, but when he did, they really had a hard time. They went up through from France up into Germany, and as they were moving through, they liberated some of the concentration camps. So you can imagine what that experience was like for them. I don't know why I'm being so nervous here, but I am. Okay, so I grew up one of 5 kids, 2 boys, 3 girls. My dad was a welder at Dorsey Trailers, the original Dorsey Trailers in Elba, Alabama, for 20-something years. My mom worked in the textile mill, in the one in Opp, Kinston, and then the one up in Brundage until it closed. You know, all of that went away from here. So that's mainly how we grew up. And we always heard about Fort Rucker, so if you wanted a good job, that was always what you were thinking. You were going to, when you got out of high school, especially as a woman, you would probably go to cosmetology school, nursing school, or something in admin, basically, or get married, become a housewife. So I went to I went to Opp trade school at the time, Douglas MacArthur, took data processing, which was like early computer programming and business. Applied for a civil service job at Fort Rucker and got it. So 1975, I got a job at Student Personnel in processing the enlisted students for the AIT and the warrant officer candidates for flight school. So that's how I found out that women were in flight school. I had no idea. Let me backtrack a little bit. As I was growing up, I had mentioned to my dad that about going into the Army, but because of the way he was, he said, no way. You know, he didn't think women should be in the military because of the experiences during World War II. But by this time, I was older. So when I found out that they had women in the program, I went to see her. First of all, I took the FAST test. That's the flight aptitude test. You could only take it one time back then. Remember that? If you flunked it, that was it. So found out the office to go to on post at Rucker, took the FAST test, passed. Still not saying anything to my parents. Went downtown Enterprise, Alabama. God, maybe I'll quit shaking you in a minute. Went downtown Enterprise, Alabama to see a recruiter and told him I wanted to join the Army to go to flight school. So that's what I did. He said, what about the FAST test? I said, I already have that. Did the ASFAB, all the other tests you have to do. So I qualified. But I had to wait about 6 months to get a slot for flight school. So in the meantime, I'm still working at student personnel. Got a class date of 1 March 77 for basic training in Fort McClellan. I told my mom and dad about it, kind of got that all cleared over, and went to basic training telling them that I'm coming back here to go through admin training as a clerk. So, got out of basic, came back to Fort Rucker. They still don't know anything. You know, we have to stay on post anyway, so I didn't have contact with them in walk school, so it worked out fine. The day that I soloed, because I'm thinking there's no reason to say anything to them and have them yelling at me if I can't get past solo, which is between like 12 and 15 hours or so when you're flying. Correct, yeah? Yeah. Ooh, so the day I soloed out at Hunt Stage Field, I went back to the barracks to the payphone and I called them. My mom answered the phone, my dad was listening in, and I said, hey Mom, I just wanted to tell you that I soloed today. Of course, she didn't have a clue what I was talking about. And I said, in a helicopter, and I said, I'm here for flight school, Mom. I'm not here to be a clerk or secretary. And her words were, Patricia, are you crazy? I still hear that ringing in my ears all the time. And I said, no, I just decided that, you know, this is what I wanted to do. I want to give it a chance anyway. So it just went from there. So now I got my eyes set on the wings, you know. I got past solo. So we're going into contact. All of that went good, went well. Got into instruments. Believe it or not, I breezed through that. Guess who my check pilot was? Mr. Bobby Hogan from the Alabama Guard. And his son, Roger, was like 2 weeks behind me in flight school. So small world. Everybody knows him, I think, right? Yeah. So that made the check ride smoother. You know, I found out, hey, you know, I'm with an Alabama guy and all this, but I don't think he let me slip or, you know, slide. But I graduated June of '78. I've got some pictures in here that you guys can see. I think there was like 17 of us in the class. I was the only woman. There were 4 women at the time in the barracks there where we were staying. They had us segregated from the men. So you kind of had to watch out the window to see when they fell out in formation. And you go, oh, okay. And you run down those, you did, literally. You run down those stairs and get out there and line up with them, you know. So that's how it went for the women back in the day. I got my assignment orders after I graduated and got my W01 pin and went to Korea, 117th. Frank. 117th Aviation in Chungcheong, Korea. Saw a helicopter company flying UH-1s. Only one assigned again. Oh, goodness. But it went great. The first trip to the field, they had me in a pup tent, and the guys had the mediums and the large tent. So I'm stuck in a little pup tent, like you see. You know where your nose is at the top? You know what I'm talking about.
Who had the other shelter hat?
Well, nobody.
You didn't have anybody?
No, I'm out there. We set up that night, and it rained during the night, and what I thought was a dry area ended up being a little stream bed. So in the middle of the night, this is true, I'm having to get up and move because the water is running through there. Anyways, we worked it out a couple of field trips later, whereas we got in another lieutenant, female, and they gave us a GP small, where there was a catch to that
it's the winter time. The tent has a hole in it. We didn't have a heater, the guys had the heater. So what we would do is whoever had to get up first, because one of the sleeping bags, the zipper didn't work, so we would just trade off and jump from one sleeping bag to the other, I'm serious, to try to stay warm, you know, so we could get dressed or go to our meeting. I know. Finally they got used to us being in the unit though. In Korea we flew the Rock Army, y'all know what that is, right? Republic of Korean Army. We flew up along the DMZ quite often, inside all the different training areas, the tac zones, things of that nature. We also supported the Black Cats and the Innkeepers, the Chinook units out of Pyeongtaek at the time. They're very popular within themselves, you know, they have a rich history. We did one Honest John mission a year. Usually the Hueys would carry the security force and the Chinook would carry the round. Simulated nuclear security missions. We had to have a large group of us within the unit that had I had a top secret at the time, security clearances so we could be on those missions. But one of the best trips was we were carrying this Rock Army General, and we landed up on top of a pinnacle, and he's saying, y'all can come with me. Well, heck, we're looking around because the place is just only big enough for the helicopter. And we're thinking, where are we going with you know? But we all climbed out. We got it secured. We climbed out, walked down the hillside, and we got to go in a tunnel site for the South Koreans where we were looking through. They let us look through the camera and everything. We're looking straight over into North Korea. So that was quite a treat right there, just to get to see that. But everything went well in Korea. I loved it. Great guys. We had a lot of the guys from Vietnam era and stuff. And we flew a lot of sorties, a lot of multi-ship operations. We'd go platoon size and battalion size. Colonel Page was the 52nd Aviation Battalion Commander at the time, William C. Page. Who y'all know went on to TRADOC and all that force camp. Yeah.
Trish, I don't understand why you run that stream bed in warm weather. That's the only place the Army could operate, because everything else is rice fields. Or they're pear tree farms, you know, so if you're going to do anything, you're going to be in the bird bed.
Oh, God. But you didn't complain now. You weren't going to make yourself stand out anymore, you know. Seriously, though, I enjoyed them. I enjoyed working with all those guys. I learned a lot. I left Korea and I came back to 2nd Army Division, Fort Hood, Texas. And for 17 months, I was the pilot for General Millinelli. When he was Chief of Staff, he came over from 6th Cav to 2nd Army. That was one of the highlights of my career, absolutely. Gosh. As you know, he was battling lymphoma at that time too. We'd go to those long, as a division, you know, we'd go out for 30 days in the field. And I've seen him walk with an IV hooked up with chemo to his arm during those exercises. So he was definitely a tough go-getter guy.
The range out at Fort Rucker's named there.
It is, yes, it is. And I recently spoke to one of his sons and his wife up in Idaho. Yeah. But goodness, what a great person to fly for. He could be tough, but as long as you did your job, he had no issues. We went on Reforger together in 1980 to Germany. We flew with A Company 8th ID, Bad Kreuznach, Germany. During Reforger exercise, we were there for about 40 days because we were there before the exercise and a little bit after. So that was an experience again for me because I'd never been anywhere. Oh, I left out one part. I had never flown in my entire life until I went to flight school. I'd never flown in anything. So you can imagine the dollar ride off of Hanchy in a TH-55, you know, they call it. But anyway, we all make it. Oh, goodness.
So after I was there at Hood for about 4 years, in the meantime, I had come back TDY to the Rotary Wing Instructor Pilot course here in 81 and back to Hood. I left Hood, I came back to Rucker for the advanced course and the instrument examiner course in 83, and then in 85 I was back for the C-12 course. I got stationed at Fort Sill, Oklahoma in a flight detachment. We had four helicopters, two T-42, C-12, and U-21 fixed wing there at the time. I have to be honest, I love the helicopter part, the fixed wing part. Yeah, it was neat to get all those qualifications, but you miss that contact with the people, you know, that you have when you fly the helicopters. We did a lot of jumps at the air shows up in Oklahoma City. One year we flew a Navy SEAL jump team or a jump team out of the 82nd. Another year, I want to tell you what happened to me flying at 8,000 feet with a Navy SEAL jump team. We got the doors open, pinned back, of course, in that Huey, and I've got my window down and I'm flying left seat. And the guy walks down the skid and he reaches in and kisses me on the cheek and then he peels off. I'm thinking, oh my God, what just happened here? You know, he's gone, you know. But those guys are nuts, as you know. But we need the nuts, don't we, sometimes? And if I can tell this story without crying, about the reason you do all of this, I found that to be one night at a county fair in Oklahoma. We were there supporting the recruiting command, and we had a Huey on static display. And we'd been there all afternoon. And as the night wore on, you know, more and more people came. The locals were just red dirt farmers and stuff. Oh, God. This dad walked up. He's standing off to the side with this little boy. And he kept standing there, and he never got in line to come up to get inside the helicopter. And we just had the doors pinned back on the Huey, and we were just letting him go in and out the back, but never up in the cockpit, because you know how kids are with switches and stuff. They'll throw everything and put it in the wrong position. So I kept looking at him, and you could tell they didn't have that much. So finally, I walked over, and I said, hey, would y'all like to see the helicopter? And I figured out what was going on. They thought they'd have to pay. Oh. And I said, no, come on, you know, let's go over there. So I opened up that cockpit door, opened it up, put that little boy in the seat, took my helmet down and put it on his head. Oh, you ought to see the dad's face. That meant so much to him that he was able to do that for his son. I'm sorry. I didn't cry then, but afterwards, ooh, I lost it. But anyway, so I guess that's one of the reasons I love the helicopters, because you could get more in touch with everybody that was around, you know. So I left, I was at Fort Sill, Oklahoma in 1987, and I had orders to go to back to Korea, but TDY en route to California for about 6 months. They were replacing their U-21s with RC-12s. So now I'm going to go military intelligence. I did not want to fly circles in the sky. I had 10 years in, so I'm looking at least 10 more to go. I didn't want that to be 10 more years of just flying, you know, a fuel load in the sky. So I called up Branch and I said, hey, if I turn down these orders, what happens? And he said, well, Trish, you'll have to get out, you know, if you turn down these orders. And I said, okay, then I guess that's what I'm going to do. Well, God shined again, and a friend of mine from the Texas Guard, because we'd see all these guys, we'd go in and out of places, you know, meet people from different units. He said that Arizona was looking for 2 C-12 pilots, because they were replacing their U-21 out there, you know, in Phoenix at Headquarters Start. And he said, Trish, you probably have a good chance of getting one of those jobs. And the guys in the company are going, no, you know how it's all very political, you know, don't get your hopes up too much or whatever. All right, I put my application in right away. I called out there, they faxed me the paperwork, I sent it right back. They called me right back and they said, this is all in 1 week. They said, can you be here on Friday for an interview? I said, absolutely I can. So I flew out on Thursday, went to the interview on Friday morning, and Monday morning I got a call in operations there at Fort Sill. And everybody's gathering around, you know, they're trying to listen in, see what's going to happen, because they said Arizona was calling me, and they'd asked me if I'd come to work for them. So I got one of them. The other position went to one of the full-timers there at the facility, the aviation facility in Arizona, so Chuck Sellers. So he and I flew together from, 87 to 94. Flying C-12s, I did some UH-1 because we also had the rescue mission for the state. We helped out the Indians inside the canyon in the wintertime with hay and stuff of that nature too. So Colonel Gillespie from the attack battalion down at Marana with the 285th, first the 285th came up one day and walked in the office because Chuck and I ran the whole C-12 detachment, you know. He said, hey Trish, the training officer for Charlie Company is retiring. Will you come down and work for me? And he said, and I hadn't even thought about Apaches at the time, and he said, and you'll just be flying 58s. He knew I was 58 qualified, and they had 58 Charlies down there. And he said, you'll fly 58s until we can get you a class date. So I said, well, you're going to run it through Colonel Bodine, the state aviation officer, and see if he'll let me go, you know. But he agreed that I could. So I went down to work for Colonel Gillespie at the attack battalion. I flew 58s. I went with them flying 58s to the certification of the Apaches to Fort Head, Texas for about 40 days in 94. And then in 95, I got a class date for the Apaches here at Fort Rucker. In August, I think it said on my certificate, August of 95, I got AMAL Apache qualified. And I flew with those guys. And you know, it was an absolute pleasure. I respected them, they respected me, and we just had the best of times. So in 97, I retired. I decided I'm coming back this way. I'm coming back home. So I came here. I just bummed around a little bit. I worked for about 6 months at the post office, you know, like during Christmas, things of that nature. And then people started saying to me, why don't you get a job out at Rucker? And that's where I started from, you know. I started civil service at Rucker because we'd always heard those were the good paying jobs. So it's like I made a full circle. And so I applied actually for the scheduler's job at Hanchey Field, and I was only there for a few weeks when the supervisors down in test flight came up to me and he said, he'd heard through the grapevine, he said, Trish, you're AMAL qualified, aren't you? And I said, yeah. He said, don't you want to come down and work for us? So that's how I got down in test flight. They sent me to the maintenance test, the Army, the whole course, maintenance test pilot course. So I worked AMAL Apaches, and then right shortly we got the DMALs. And so I went to the differences course between the A and D for qualification. Army school, you're attending it with the regular Army soldiers. And then turned right around and went to the DMAL maintenance test, the full course again. So I was qualified maintenance test pilot, both of them. I worked out there for 5 years on nights. Don Brown, as y'all might remember him, in the early 2000s. He lost his life on the range out there at Tabernacle. He and I were stick buddies at nights when he was working for AFS. So he went to the schoolhouse and I stayed on until 2006. And I said, that's enough. I want to do something else. Went to work for Dave Swank, CSC, in the RCTDs at the Senate building. I worked there for about 2 years with the students and also the captain's career course, as you know. And then during that time, we also had all these people that were deploying. So the units that got together, you know, they were all from all different units and they formed up collectively. And so that's what we were there for them to do their collective training. We ran exercises out of the Senate building for those guys. So you'd see them from Hawaii or wherever else as they came through. And do y'all know Howard Bramlett?
Yes.
Okay. Howard Bramlett had a corporation called CKM. He lived up here at Rocky Head. And he had about 15 employees. So through the grapevine again, heard about him. He came out there one day to the Senate building to talk to me. We met in the parking lot for him to kind of interview me, and he wanted to know if I'd come to work for him. And he needed someone as the training helicopter rep for the PEO Aviation out of Huntsville. So that's what I did from 2008 to 2014. I was out at Cairns with the 67s and then over at Shell for the 58s, working for those guys out of Huntsville, trying to be like a mesh between ACLC and them. So that's the story of my life, basically. I'm hoping I didn't bore you guys too much. Oh, the hanky in my, because all the uniforms were men's, you know, like I was real skinny at the time, so I even had to take up the waistline, you know, where you pull it out. If I pulled it out, the flight suit was still going to hang on me, you know. So I always kept a lady's hanky in my pocket, because just to remind me, you know, something feminine. So this ends the talking part of our presentation, but these people have a lot more information, and there's others of you around here who seem to have a lot more information too. So please have refreshment and ask the questions that you maybe not wanting to talk about in front of everybody. As a former warrant myself, when I went to the field in Reforger, because of the way they were, I was stuck in that GP big with everyone else. So they just put me in the back corner. But Patty, tell them about when you were in Texas and you were going to school, what y'all did with mineral wells. Remember what you shared with me? Tell them about that. Because mineral wells was
Let me just ask, did any of you guys go through Fort Walter? Oh, I was a Denton Dolly, if you know what that is. I went to Texas Woman's University to the nursing school there. And to get out of the, not the barracks, but the dorms, on weekends, we would go to the walk graduations, and of course they would send buses to pick us up and take us out there. I guess it was actually the dance or whatever. And so we would get on the bus, they would be standing out there. When we got to the place on Fort Walters, and they would grab us by the arm, ask us everything they could think of that they were going to need for that receiving line, because this was your training going through the receiving line. So they were having to introduce us and tell the receiving line all about us. And of course, we're going, what world is this? You know, so yeah, that was my first introduction to Army aviation. So, but please, thank you so much for coming once again, and enjoy your trip.